One, two, hi. This is a new YouTube channel where I'll be giving my opinion on body language. Today we're looking at Adam Booth. Adam Booth is a boxing trainer, a British boxing trainer, and I'll put the date of this video up. This video is from IFL. What's his fucking name now? I forgot it again. Adam Booth. Adam Booth is a British boxing trainer, and he's handled both Grooves. I'm new to this, hang on. He's handled both Groves and Eubank in the past, and that's why we're watching this video today, is to try and read his body language and find out his opinion on who wins out of Groves and Eubank. I've watched quite a few videos with Adam Booth in. I've watched quite a few of his interviews. I've got a reasonable judge of his character. He'd be difficult to play poker against, let's just put it like that. And I'm a bit of a fan of British boxing, so that's my interest and knowledge. And it's important to note that Adam Booth used to train both Groves and Eubank, but Eubank, Chris Eubank Jr. I'm talking about, he left under not bad circumstances, I don't think they have a beef, as it were, but that's different with Groves. Groves does have a beef with Adam Booth. In fact, he took him to court. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I know they had a messy breakup. Let's just put it like that. So first of all, I'm just going to have a little look. He's asked actually about a different Eubank, Harlem Eubank, which is Chris Eubank Jr.'s cousin. So we're just going to use this as a little baseline so that we can see what Adam Booth is like under questioning.
Bill,
yeah.
He spoke to you about Harlem Eubank. How did the link up come about?
I've known Harlem for a few years. So first off, let's just take that back. This is Adam thinking. He's looking off into the distance, into his mind's eye. His eyes slightly to the right. This is in accessing his memory.
I've known Harlem for a few years, and he used to come to the gym and spar.
A little look to the left there, a little look to the left where he tried to work out how to say the words he was about to say, to construct things, and now he's back into his memory.
When Chris Jr. was training.
So that's Adam Booth looking into his memory and remembering images of Harlem Eubank training when Chris Jr. was training. That's a nice baseline for us to take on to this. Now this is back at the end of the interview, and there's a little rapport between Cougan Cassius, the interviewer, and Adam Booth here. And he's sitting forward because he's just had a little joke and he thinks it's coming to the end of the interview.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No silly endings.
No, I'm asking if there's anything else you want to talk about.
What do you want to talk about?
So now he's sat back again and he's nice and relaxed. And you can see that he's sat back in his chair, his face is nice and open, slight smile, he's nice and relaxed.
Oh, Groves Eubank. Who?
The O creates this raised eyebrow. What's this coming? It's a little bit of performance, it's a little bit of acting, a little bit of showmanship there, the raised eyebrow. So don't read too much into that.
Who wins?
Because now he's got to think about the question. Oh, what about Groves Eubank? Who wins?
Oh, Groves Eubank. Who wins?
And at first, what's interesting about Adam Booth is his natural reaction to any question is to give you the poker face. First thing he wants to do is to make sure that you don't know what he's about to say. So for a second, he's not even thinking about the question. All he's doing is thinking about maintaining his composure.
What do you want to talk about?
Oh, Groves Eubank. Who wins?
Maintain composure, access memory. And this is him, again, having a real think. He's looking into his memory. Slight bit of tension in the jaw, if we just rewind that quickly. You see that? There's a little swallow and he actually bites on his teeth. Yeah, look, a bit of tension in the jaw. So he's thinking about something. He's thinking about the answer to this question, and his first instinct is to bite down on his teeth. So I think he doesn't want to tell us what he's thinking. He doesn't want to blurt out the first thing on his mind. He's had to think about that, and he's clenched his teeth a bit here.
It's a great fight, isn't it?
It is.
He's still thinking, and there was a little smack of the lips there, a little bit of It's a tasty fight, isn't it? You can, he likes that.
It all depends on what happens in the first 3 rounds.
So that's a cryptic answer from Adam. All depends what happens in the first 3 rounds. But he spent a good deal of time thinking about that. He's seen Groves in training. He's seen Eubank in training. He's seen their careers. And he's had a good think. He's imagined what they're both like. I'm just going to take it back.
What do you want to talk about?
What do you want to talk about?
Oh, Groves Eubank. Who wins?
He's thinking. He's imagining. He's not going to tell you immediately what's on his mind.
Great fight, isn't it?
It is.
It's a great fight. He's thinking it through. He's imagining them.
It all depends on what happens in the first 3 rounds.
And that's the key. If something happens in those first 3 rounds, something particular that Adam is thinking about here, then he knows the result. If that one thing he's worked out, if so-and-so does this and if he does that, if this happens in the first 3 rounds, it could be an early night for someone.
All depends what happens in the early part of that fight.
And again, all depends. He repeats himself. Let's have a little look. We'll do it.
It's a great fight, isn't it?
It is.
Do it bit by bit.
It all depends on what happens in the first 3 rounds. All depends what happens in the early.
That face of sort of stress there, that's just stressing the point in the early part of the fight.
Early part of that fight.
And he almost sort of sits up in his chair a little when he says that. So there's definitely something something wants to come out here, doesn't it? Something wants to be said. He's sat up to say it.
Early part of that fight.
But he's still being cryptic. It depends what happens in the early part of that fight.
That will determine the winner.
And there you go, that's very telling. That's a big, well, it's not a broad smile, but it's a real smile. You can see it in his eyes. You can see that has actually made him happy. And there's a smile of contentment in that. It's not just the smile of deceit. It's not just that he's held back information. He knows the information he's not telling you. So he's pleased with himself for being able to answer the question without giving the information out that he didn't want to give out. But he's also pleased with the fact that he knows something that you don't or we don't know. He's pleased with his idea of the result, though. It hasn't been a displeasing thought, has it?
I can see you've pondered this fight in your brain.
He tells me he's pondered it, and he literally looks over to his memory to where he's been pondering it.
Obviously.
There's a little tell there, a little bit of stress. And I think what that is that it brings up these questions about Groves, doesn't it? It brings up these questions about leaving the trainer under a dark cloud and the old disputes. And he doesn't want to sort of veer off into that territory. He doesn't want to be the guy who was sat at home mulling over George Groves getting his face panned in like some bitter old, so-and-so. So he doesn't want to be that person. So he's not happy about the idea that he's been pondering it. At first it's okay that he's been pondering it, but then he realises the implications and it gives him a little bit of trouble. But
obviously. I feel there's more you could say.
And there's almost a flare of the nostrils, a widening of the eyes, a sort of emotional response here. Just look for it just before he tilts his head forward in defiance.
I feel there's more you could say.
You see that? A little bit of an emotional response there.
Say, or want to say.
I could say a lot, but I don't need to. I know them both fairly well as fighters.
So he tells us exactly the truth there. I could say a lot, but I don't need to. I know them both fairly well as fighters.
And I've seen them spar a lot.
And what he leaves out there is he knows them both fairly well as men as well.
I know how each of them can win.
When he looks off and says, I know how each of them can win, what he means is, I know how each of them can be beaten.
I think one of them wants to fight more than the other one.
And that's a very true statement. That's just purely from his heart.
I think one of them wants to fight more than the other one.
But if you have a look at his face here, he thinks one of them wants to fight more than the other one. But there's this almost surprised expression on his face, isn't there? His eyebrows have started to push up in the middle. His brow's slightly furrowed, but it's not a look of stress. It's not the anger. It's almost a surprise. And I think that's because he knows something particular that he's thinking about, something that's happened in sparring in the gym, and somebody has surprised him. And he's thought back to that time when he saw something that surprised him, and he's recalling the memory, and that's why he thinks one of these guys has the edge over the other. One of these guys wants it more. And he's trying not to tell us who it is, but in my mind, I think that must be Chris Eubank. I think it must be. I think he's been surprised by Chris Eubank's tenacity in the gym. I think he's seen the work ethic and the hunger, and I think that's something that Adam Booth has reflected on, and I think that's what points him towards a Eubank win, especially as Groves is towards the end of his career, and Eubank's, sorry, I don't want to call him Eubank plural, Chris Eubank Jr. is at the early stages of his career, or early-ish stages. I think that hunger is going to come into it. One of them wants it more.
But it's a great matchup, great fight.
A great matchup and a great fight. And he does shake his head and give it a little bit of stress. But it's
a great matchup, great fight.
He does think it's a good fight. He shakes his head as if to say, don't say what I'm thinking of saying. You know, the head shake there for me is just to stop him. You know, it's his body contradicting what he thinks is a great match, but great fight, but he also thinks a load of other stuff which he's not telling us. No, shake your head. And a little bit of stress there from that mental process of having to hold back.
We're surprised that the game.
And a nice purse of the lips to finish. He's definitely holding something back here. He's managed all the way through that question to not say the thing that's on his mind.
Gal is back working with Frank Warren.
And a nice breath out and a lick of the lips as we move on to the next question, something that's easier to answer, that doesn't come with all those personal, emotional attachments. So that's what I think. I think he thinks, Adam Booth, and again, this is just my opinion, so, you know, I'm just saying what I see. I think Adam Booth believes Chris Eubank wants the win more than George Groves. And I think that brings him a small amount of pleasure to think that if in the first 3 rounds, George Groves gets maybe rocked, maybe swarmed, maybe there's a punch that comes from a particular angle that might worry Groves. If Eubank gets the uppercut off, maybe it could really set the tone for the fight, and Groves could find it a very hard struggle to regain that ground.
It all depends on what happens in the first 3 rounds.
But if Groves can survive that early onslaught and can work out Chris Eubank, he may well be in with a chance.
It all depends what happens in the early part of that fight that will determine the winner.
I think that he believes that George Groves can mentally or emotionally win or lose the fight, or any fight, in the first few rounds, and that if Groves doesn't feel he's able to get on top of his opponent or outsmart his opponent, if he doesn't see a chink in the armour early on, that it might mentally set him back. I think he's seen that from Groves at some stage.
I can see you've pondered this fight in your brain, obviously. I feel there's more you could say, or want to say.
I could say a lot, but I don't need to. I know them both fairly well as fighters, and I've seen them spar a lot. I know how each of them can win. I think one of them wants to fight more than the other one, but it's a great matchup.
There you go. One of them wants it more than the other one. I'm going to go with Chris Eubank if I'm purely judging on what Adam Booth says. So if you like the video, click like, subscribe, leave me comments on how to improve the content. Do you want me to speak for more or less about things? Tell me what you want me to speak about. Be good.